Welcome to Weather and Climate Chat, recorded Monday, September 19th. Dr. Michael Davis and Monsoon Mike. Welcome, Dr. Davis. How are you today?
Doing pretty good.
Now, we are recording this on Monday, so if you're listening to this on Tuesday and Wednesday, the sun will already probably be back out by then. But just put yourself into Monday's shoes for a second, and you'll go along with the joke. What was that weird wet stuff falling from the sky? Something we have not seen in a long time.
It was liquid
Yes.
precipitation.
Yes.
We had rain.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of it.
Yeah, we got a lot of it. I was starting to get a little discouraged yesterday because things moved a little slower than I at first thought, and there really wasn't much that happened at all yesterday. In fact, the sun came out in some areas yesterday. So I'm thinking that it's going to be another, almost winter time-ish type bust where it misses us. But then I got woken up overnight at around 2 a.m. with some pretty torrential downpours and was happy to see that it didn't miss us.
Yeah, and Sunday, we did get some downpours.
Yeah, there was
scattered around
scattered
the area.
downpours,
I
yeah.
know by my place in Emmaus, we got a lot.
Okay.
We had a brief downpour about 10, 15 minutes or so, but it was coming down pretty good.
Up in Auburn, nothing pretty much all day yesterday, so it was very scattered. But last night was more widespread.
We had the big squall line
Yeah.
pretty much come through last
Yeah.
night, and that pretty much woke up a lot of people with lightning
Yeah.
and thunder and
Yeah.
torrential downpours that came with it. Some parts of Berks County have already got 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain.
And that was well-needed rain.
Oh yes, we were about 6 inches below normal for the year, so this is really helping to eat into that deficit. And fortunately, the ground's been dry enough, so it's sucking up that water pretty good.
Good. So not really many flooding issues that I've seen. A couple
No.
flash flooding issues I saw. There was one road in Reading that had a flash flood, but there was a common spot. That road always floods out, so there was really nothing unusual there.
And that's what the Weather Service is saying with
Yeah.
poor drainage areas.
Poor drainage,
so
yeah.
if you have an area like a roadway that's
Normal.
usually flooded, probably suspect it's going
Yeah.
to be flooding. Or
Right.
if we have some of the leaves I think are starting to come down. Not
Yeah.
many, but there
Yeah.
are a few.
Yeah.
And if they get in the grate, they can
Yep.
pretty much block up the drainage area for there and lead to a little bit of isolated flooding as well.
That'll be a much bigger issue about a month from now with the leaves coming down.
Yes.
So, not so much right now, but we'll see. Now, first of all, let's do things in order. Last week we had Wednesday. We had a run at, and actually I think we surpassed 90. You and I had our little bet to see if we would make it to 90, and both Allentown and Reading did make 90.
Yeah, you
So
got that one.
I got that one. But I think I'm ready to agree with you now that I think we're finally done with 90s now, I think, for the
All right.
year. I think. However, we're not done with 80s.
No, we got a few more 80s in us.
Yeah, we had a nice cool shot last Thursday where temperatures were at or maybe just slightly below normal, but it felt good. Nights were nice and cool, upper 40s, low 50s. Daytime was only in the 70s. But then, has been the theme all summer, this weekend got pretty muggy again with those dew points and humidity coming back. Now let's talk about the weekend this past weekend a little bit. It was just a week ago that we recorded Weather and Climate Chat, and there was like nothing going on in the tropics. And then within a day, we had 2 tropical storms out there.
We had Ian, we
Ian.
had Julia,
Yep.
and now we have Carl
Yeah.
out there.
Actually, the second one you mentioned, Julia, did some of her moisture get mixed up with what we had last night?
Yep.
That's what
This
I thought.
moisture that we're seeing on Monday and perhaps even the first part of Tuesday will be from Julia. All this rain that we're experiencing is thanks to that remnants of that tropical system that's spinning off the mid-Atlantic coast right now.
Yeah. Now that she kind of came, do I want to say out of nowhere or
She was the one that formed right off the eastern
right
coast
off
of Florida.
Right.
And it didn't really have that much in the way of actual potential because
Right.
it was over land, or at least part of it was over land. But then
Right.
it started to drift a little further eastward, and that allowed the warmer water, say from the Gulf Stream, to start enhancing the strength of the storm.
Gotcha. So we got a healthy amount of rain thanks to Julia and to a cold front that came through. Now, rain is exiting, and it's a good thing that we got that rain because there's really not a whole lot to look at for the coming days. Once again, we get back into a warm summer-like dry pattern.
The high pressure builds in for Tuesday night into Wednesday and pretty much becomes entrenched over the eastern U.S. for next few days.
Now, normal highs this time of year are about mid-70s, and I'm looking at some of the highs from the National Weather Service and AccuWeather for the next couple of days, and we're going to be mid-80s, it looks like.
Yeah, we'll be above normal again for temperature-wise. That's probably be expected from a high-pressure system, let alone if it's going to be pretty much keeping the skies clear, and if it's set up just right, you can get some warm southerly winds to help raise the temperatures.
Now, being a fall weather fan like I am, as you know me, I'm not happy about it being so warm the next few days, but is the one potentially light at the end of the tunnel is it doesn't look as muggy. This is not as muggy of an air mass, so it's more of a warm, dry air mass.
Yeah, the moisture will be down with this high-pressure system and with the air mass, so we won't be experiencing any real summertime heat.
Okay.
Since you brought up that you're the fall person, you know what Thursday is, right?
Yes. Can't wait. Can't wait. Although it won't really mean much until maybe Sunday. Sunday we have it looks like a backdoor cold front. Actually, Saturday. I saw the National Weather Service in Mount Holly's discussion this morning said that there's a big bust potential with, I don't know if you saw this in their write-up, there's a big bust potential with Saturday's temperatures, depending on where that backdoor front sets up. It could be one of those situations where Delaware is, flirting with 90 and the Poconos are only in the 60s, low 70s, depending on where that backdoor front sets up.
Yeah. With backdoor cold fronts,
Right.
For our latitude, we typically get a lot of weather to come out of the west. In fact,
Right.
most of our weather does come from a westerly direction. This
Sure.
is why if you look at Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, that sort of region, they experience the weather about a day or so before we do.
Right.
With backdoor cold fronts or backdoor systems, they come in from the east, so they're essentially coming in the back door.
Right.
And typically with backdoor cold fronts, you have a strengthening ridge or high pressure system over the North Atlantic that gets stronger and pushes pretty much the cooler air to the east, and that's what we're calling with the backdoor cold fronts in meteorological terms.
Okay. So Saturday, that backdoor front starts to sneak in, and that frontal passage looks dry. There's really not any precipitation that I see anybody forecasting with that.
And if you have that dry air mass in place, that's to be expected.
But we're looking at a fairly notable temperature drop. National Weather Service has they got 84 tomorrow, 84 Wednesday. This is for Kutztown. 82 Thursday, 82 Friday. I personally think some of those numbers could be a little low. I'm going to be more aggressive, as I always am, and thinking maybe we see some 86s out of this.
I'll go with you on that.
Yeah. But then Saturday, 77. Sunday, only 71. And I saw in my neck of the woods up in Auburn, the National Weather Service up there going with 69 for Sunday. So that's finally getting to be some more fall-like weather, if that happens.
Yeah, that would be seasonal, if not below seasonal temperatures.
Which will be nice. Now, the question will be, though, will that last? Because it seems that the trend this early meteorological autumn has been we get these little lame bursts of cool, but then the bridge just builds right back in a day or two later, and we're back to the hot.
Pretty much, yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to be a trend.
And that also goes along with what you and I were talking about off air and what you shared with me with the typhoon that was out in the Pacific.
Right.
And how that could be influencing our weather potentially this weekend.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Weather Channel now, their long-range forecast, 70 Sunday, 71 Monday, 74 Tuesday, 75 Wednesday, 76 Thursday. This is next Thursday, like a week from Thursday. 74 next Friday, 72. So it looks like if they're right that this bout of cooler weather stays put a little more than the past ones.
And I think a lot of people would gladly accept that, given the strength of the heat that we've had this past summer.
Now let's go back to what you said. Something interesting that I want to, maybe we can kind of make this our mini little topic. There was some pretty amazingly strong typhoons. I think there was 2 actually out there in the Pacific in recent weeks. And hit some small islands, and some of the extent out there is still being, established of how bad it was. But what people don't realize is sometimes storms like that, thousands and thousands of miles away across the globe, can indirectly affect our weather over here, like 10 days later. Is that true?
Yes, they certainly can.
Okay.
We have a lot of teleconnections, as they're called, between one part of the globe and another. I always like to bring up in meteorology Typhoon Haiyan, which happened, 2-3 years ago now?
Yeah,
sometime
I remember
in that range. And when Haiyan struck the Philippines and did all that damage, to that area, it got caught up in the jet stream and got carried past Japan, past very far eastern Russia, across Alaska, came down across Canada, and then about 10, 11 days later, you could actually see pretty much the storm system, or what was once Haiyan, crossing the Midwest, and we had a pretty good tornado outbreak across the Midwest that day. In fact, I remember that weekend the Bears, the NFL team, were home in Chicago, and they had to delay the game.
Wow.
That they had because there was tornadoes that were encroaching on the city of Chicago.
Now that's a very I vaguely remember that. That's a very direct correlation where you could actually see the energy from that storm way out there kind of morphing into the United States. But you can also have some more indirect impacts as well too. And you might be more akin to this. Can these storms sometimes affect the placement of the jet stream and stuff like 10 days down the line?
They can. They
Okay.
have the potential to do that.
Right.
Depends on the strength of the storm.
Right.
When we talk about a really extreme case, like with the Typhoon Myrti that happened fairly recently, you would have that pretty much get caught up in the jet stream, but because of all that energy that's getting involved with the storm itself, it has the potential to essentially redirect the jet stream.
Was that the typhoon that I sent you that picture where you could see the eye pretty
Yes.
much?
Yes, it was.
There's a little island. I forget the name of the island, but it's part of the Philippines, I believe. And it was the most magnificent textbook picture of a hurricane, yet the scariest textbook picture of a hurricane because this tiny island was entirely enveloped by the eye. Mm-hmm. So for that little piece of moment there, they had, I'm sure, beautiful clear skies there, but I'm sure at that point there was already tons of damage, and then they still had to get through a whole second part.
Yeah.
And I was just reading on the news, there hasn't been a whole lot, but not really a lot of information coming out of this island because it's a very remote island, only like 3,000 people. Infrastructure is not that great to begin with, so we might not know for a while how badly this island was affected.
Yeah, there's always a delay when you get these fantastic storms that have been striking, say, areas that are somewhat remote.
Right.
You don't really get the full scale of the picture until several days, if not weeks afterwards.
Yeah, that was a truly amazing storm. Well, we'll see how that affects our weather in our neck of the woods, but you know. In the coming days and weeks, but I'm definitely looking for some more fall-like weather. But not really. I wouldn't break out the sweaters and the jackets just yet because it still looks like as we get into October, climate predictions that are still leaning on the above normal side.
Yeah, there's still time for fluctuations in terms of the transitional season that fall typically is. So it's not going to be kind of a smooth descent into cooler temperatures. You're going to have these ups and downs in terms of temperatures.
What we're going to have this week, where we're going to go from like Tuesday to maybe as far as Friday or Saturday with temperatures in the mid-80s. How unusual is that for September 20th through 24th? Is that highly unusual or not that unusual? Or
it's definitely not usual.
Right.
We should be much cooler, about 10 degrees or so.
Right.
Cooler this time of year, but with this warmth that we're seeing right now, it's probably, I don't know the exact extent, but I would probably put it as more perhaps uncommon.
Now, some people have asked me, and of course I try to avoid, as do you, any crazy connections, but somebody asked me if all this warmth is going to equate to a really bad winter. And I said probably not directly. However, if you're going to look at some things that we could be looking at this winter, I think we're forecasting a La Nina winter.
Actually, it looks like La Nina is not going to happen.
Oh, okay. So winter might not be affected by
it's
that
not
that much.
Developing as much as it should be. So National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration pretty much said that maybe La Nina is not going to happen this year.
Okay.
They're a lot more pessimistic, I think, about it happening now than they were, say, a month ago.
So without an El Nino or a La Nina, it might just be a fairly run-of-the-mill average winter. If we look at
if you don't have an El Nino or La Ninas, I've heard the term La Nada.
Right.
Used, so you can go with that term if you like.
Now, is there going to be a point anytime, and I think we were in the same boat last year around this time, is there going to be a point anytime when Dr. Davis wants to officially give a early look at winter? I know there's some of our friends at AccuWeather and Eastern PA Weather Authority, those guys are already flying out winter forecasts like popcorn at a movie theater. But are you going to get to a point where you're ready to do that?
Yeah, there will be a point, but
Okay.
I'm not ready to give my prediction not just quite yet because it's still summer.
When do you think is a safe time to start doing that? October-ish?
Yeah, I'd say about October.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll check in with you in about October to see where we think winter's going to go.
And you and I seem to have the same mindset for the autumn, where it looks like October is going to be maybe a little bit above average in terms of temperature.
Yeah, at or above.
November, that's when temperatures start to
Finally.
tail off.
So if anything, we might have a, as much as I love cool weather, if anything, maybe this will just be a more later extended type autumn into November, which is fine too, but
Who knows? We may have another day like Christmas Day last year when it was
hated
78,
that.
77.
that was horrible. I hated that. That was like the worst day ever. Well, Dr. Davis, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We've been on the air for about 16 minutes, so we're going to let this go for now. But we'll see you next week here in the studios.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a good week, Dr. Davis.